All right, buckle up because today we're going deep on AGI, artificial general intelligence, and how it could totally turn healthcare on its head.
Sounds intense.
Definitely. We're looking at this piece by Tom Snyder, a real big name in tech and innovation.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of him.
He's saying AGI isn't some far-off thing, but could be real in just a few years, and fast.
Wow, no kidding. So what's his take on how this whole AGI thing impacts healthcare specifically?
He gets into personalized medicine, but like on a whole other level. Imagine treatment plans not just based on your DNA, but like constantly shifting based on your body's live data.
So heart rate, blood pressure, all that.
Even more granular gut microbiome, everything. Snyder's saying AGI could create this hyper-personalized approach that human doctors just can't match.
That's wild. It's like having a 247 AI doctor fine-tuning your treatment in real time.
Exactly. But here's the catch. A lot of medical research today is all about, you guessed it, the bottom line, profit.
Right, makes sense.
So where does that leave AGI, which theoretically wouldn't have those same profit-driven motives? Could it be what finally allows us to tackle those rare diseases that often get ignored because there's not enough profit in finding a cure?
It's a fascinating thought. Snyder digs into this by talking about what he calls efficiency bias. We're so focused on making AI efficient, maximizing output, and minimizing cost.
Right, getting the most bang for your buck.
But we might be accidentally creating a system that's actually ill-equipped to handle the nuances and complexities of big societal problems.
So it's like we're giving AGI this amazing set of tools, but it might have blind spots for anything that doesn't fit into a neat little efficiency equation.
Precisely. And here's where Snyder's argument gets really interesting. He starts talking about AGI's efficiency drive potentially clashing with our human pursuit of happiness.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. This idea that we can't just optimize our way to happiness. That's a big one, so let's unpack that. How does Snyder connect these ideas of AGI, healthcare, and happiness? So we're saying AGI might miss the mark on human happiness. What's that look like in real life?
Snyder uses this example. He says, think about the things that bring us real joy, like spending time with family, friends, being out in nature, being creative.
Right, those things are important.
And those things aren't always the most efficient use of our time.
I see what you mean, yeah. Like imagine an AGI telling you to cut family time to be more productive.
Right, sounds ridiculous. But that's Snyder's point. An AGI that's all about efficiency might totally miss why those inefficient things are so important for us to feel good.
So what happens then if we have this super smart AGI calling the shots, but it doesn't really get what makes us feel fulfilled? What then? Does Snyder have any solutions for that?
He does, and this is where it gets even more interesting. He says AGI's biggest impact might not be robots taking over like in the movies.
No robot uprising.
He says it's more likely to be a huge power shift that we're not even ready for.
Power shift. Okay, now that sounds kind of scary. What does he mean by that?
It goes back to that efficiency bias we were talking about. Snyder says we got to be careful because we might accidentally create an AGI that just copies and magnifies all the biases we already have in society.
So it's not just about AGI maybe not understanding happiness, but also inheriting our worst tendencies.
Exactly. Like, remember that thing in the article about AI always picturing nurses as women and doctors as men?
Yeah, I remember that.
It's subtle, but it's a bias. And Snyder says if we're already seeing this kind of bias now, imagine what happens when AGI is making decisions that affect everyone.
That is a little scary when you put it like that. It's like we're about to hand over control, but we haven't dealt with the fact that the whole system could be biased.
And that's where the power shift comes in. Snyder says right now, the people who control how AI is developed and used are mostly already in charge.
Like governments, tech companies, right?
Exactly. And Snyder's worried that those in power, they might not want to create an AGI that challenges the systems that benefit them, even if those systems are unfair or unsustainable.
It's like a survival thing, but for whole societies. If they see AGI as a threat, will they try to control it to keep things the same?
That's the big question. And Snyder says we need to be talking about this now, before it's too late, before AGI is everywhere, and we can't control it anymore.
So where does that leave us on AGI and healthcare? We started with personalized medicine, and now we're talking about global power struggles.
Yeah, it's a lot, but Snyder does a really good job of tying it all together. He's saying we can't talk about AGI and healthcare without also dealing with these bigger issues of bias, power, and how to create a fair and equal society.
So it's bigger than just better healthcare. It's about AGI potentially changing everything about how our society works.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's what makes this so important to talk about. It's not just about cool technology. It's about the future we want for ourselves and our kids and grandkids.
That's a lot to think about. So Snyder's laid out all these challenges. But where do we go from here? Is he hopeful about the future? What does he think we should do?
That's what we'll get into in the last part of our deep dive. Snyder doesn't give easy answers, but he does give us a way to think about these challenges, and hopefully a way to use AGI for good.
So we've talked about AGI's potential in healthcare, like personalized medicine, maybe even wiping out diseases. But we've also dug into these big what-ifs about bias, power, and AGI, even understanding what makes us happy. So where does Snyder land on all this? Is he hopeful, worried?
Well, he doesn't try to make it seem easier than it is, that's for sure. He talks about this paradox. We teach AI to go for efficiency, profitability, but the answers to our biggest problems, especially in healthcare, might need totally different values altogether.
Okay, now I got to know, what kind of different values are we talking about here?
Take something like protecting endangered species, biodiversity. Snyder says AGI could probably find amazing ways to do it, but those ways might not be profitable. They might even mean we have to change how we live in big ways.
Right, that makes sense. Like, saving the rainforest is probably good for everyone in the long run, but not so much for industries that, need to cut down trees. So how does this loop back to healthcare?
Think about it this way. What if AGI figures out that to have a truly healthy population, we need to totally change how we produce food, even if it shakes up huge industries? Or what if it says we need to focus way more on preventing problems in mental health, even if it means less money for companies making drugs for diseases?
So we're back to this idea of AGI maybe having the answers, but facing resistance from those who benefit from how things are now.
Exactly. Snyder says we got to be ready for that. We might end up in a situation where we've created this intelligence that can solve huge problems, but it might not actually have the power to make those changes without those in power pushing back.
It's almost discouraging, like we could be so close to these incredible breakthroughs in healthcare, but our own systems and structures might hold us back.
It's definitely something to think about, but Snyder doesn't leave us without some hope. He says, because we're talking about these potential problems now, while AGI is still pretty new, we have a chance to guide its development in a way that's more ethical, more fair.
So what does that look like? How do we make sure AGI works for us, not the other way around?
Snyder really emphasizes inclusivity in how we develop AGI. It can't just be designed by a small group, especially those who are already in charge. We need diverse voices, different points of view, and we need to build ethical considerations into the foundation of AGI.
So more diverse teams, more representation in tech, things like that.
Exactly. And beyond that, we have to have these open, honest conversations about what values we want AGI to have. Do we just focus on efficiency? Or do we include fairness, equity, even compassion?
It's almost like raising a child, teaching them right from wrong, but on a massive scale. We're not just writing code. We're shaping the values of something potentially super intelligent.
That's a great way to put it. And at the end of the day, that's what Snyder leaves us with. The future of AGI isn't set in stone. It's up to us, all of us, to decide how this technology will fit into our lives and the future of healthcare as a whole.
That's a pretty powerful message to end on. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left thinking, what will your role be in shaping AGI? Will you watch it happen, or will you be a part of this tech revolution? That's all the time we have for this week's deep dive. We hope exploring AGI and healthcare with us has given you a lot to think about and maybe even inspired you to help shape this incredible future.